Okay, so as Laura just said, my name is Samantha, and I was on the HEAST program. Okay, to create change and ultimately to become an agent of change, I argue the way to achieve this progressive mindset differs person to person. It is created by the different interactions and different personal connections one has with the issue at stake. Additionally, the way you are presented with and taught about the social issue affects your relationship with it. By studying about pressing social and global issues, we've been learning about how to create agents of change and how to be one. As most of you probably know, we traveled to 4 core countries and studied a different social issue in each country. We started in South Africa, and we focused on public health. We then went to India and studied education. In Thailand, we focused on agriculture, and we finished with the environment in Ecuador. In South Africa and in India, we mainly focused on the social issue on a global level, while also looking at the issue through the lens of the specific country we were in. We saw firsthand how the social issue is affecting the country within the work project and our seminars. I personally felt like there was an immense connection between our work project and seminar discussions. While in South Africa, our seminars and discussions involved looking at the history of the country and how apartheid and colonialism indirectly affected the health system. We further studied and examined the HIV/AIDS epidemic. It was so rewarding for me to both learn about the issue in the work project, then also have the opportunity to discuss it in seminar. We learned about the social issue very holistically. I spent 2 weeks walking around our township, Kirtland, with Patty and our caregiver, Mari. We went house to house and saw firsthand people who were suffering from the public health system in South Africa. There was limited access to antibiotics and medicine, stigma surrounding being sick. People were unwilling to take their medication, and there was a clear divide between who was prioritized and who were not. Sorry, I need eyelash in my eye.
Yes, Sam.
Coming out? No. After work, we would head to Blood Aid as a group. We discussed what we experienced and saw during the day, and further studied how the public health system came to be in South Africa. I was fully enveloped in the public health system and was learning about it in a multitude of ways. Since I had done a project on HIV/AIDS during my senior year, it was rewarding to finally be almost living in my project. I had the ability to experience and learn about the global issue in such a different manner than my classroom experience during senior year. This direct connection between what we were studying and our work project in regards to the social issue of public health kept me engaged and made me want to make a difference. After South Africa, we headed to India, where we focused on education. Our work project consisted of teaching in local schools to young kids, where I was completely immersed in a repressive education system, something that I have never experienced before. Each day I had to partake in a system that I did not agree with, where I felt like the students' creativity and individuality were almost seen as a threat to the system. One day while teaching, the teacher pulled me aside where she repeatedly told me that the students do not learn, but rather memorize. I should not try to teach the kids to find the answer themselves, rather just write up the answer on the board so they can copy it in their notebook. I was angry with the teacher, but still felt so helpless within the whole situation. Although I did not agree with what I was partaking in, I found it very powerful to be teaching so different than what I grew up in. Our seminars surrounding education involved looking at it from a personal perspective, while also looking at the setup of the Indian education system. We were able to reflect back on our relationship with the system we grew up in and how the teaching styles in schools directly affected us, whether it be positive or negative. It was very interesting to compare my own experience to the Indian system that I was contributing to. I never really thought twice of questioning the system that I've been part of since I was 5 years old. Therefore, teaching in this environment that was so different than mine gave me the opportunity to really appreciate my education and be grateful for the teachers and mentors. My high school strived to create students who would think, question, and create, something that seemed unrealistic for these young people in the system. Additionally, we looked at how education can actually be a form of oppression. Because of what I've seen in my education, it seemed like this system ultimately wanted to create students that would lack a sense of uniqueness and individuality. While this may be incorrect, it seemed like it was from my outside perspective. One thing I kept coming back to was whether it's really my place to say that this system was wrong and possibly detrimental to the mental and intellectual growth and development of the children. Just being a form of education set up this way does not mean it is wrong. If there's no such thing as universal ethics, then it's not my place to say whether the system is wrong or not. While I would like to think that there are universal ethics, I do not think they exist because many people disregard them. To me, universal ethics are a set of moral conduct that everyone globally should abide by. However, I do not think it is possible to try to control everyone in their actions. Everyone doesn't follow these so-called rules, so it's impossible to say they exist when people ignore them. Everyone has a different idea of what being moral is, so it's realistically impossible to create a blanket statement of ethics that everyone should follow. However, at the beginning of the trip, I would have easily stated that universal ethics do in fact exist, and that people who do not follow these global laws should be convinced otherwise. If the country or cultural practice was fair, I wouldn't think their system was as developed as mine. Throughout this trip, I realized that my idea of universal ethics are just my idea of my individuals. Through my exposure to systems that do not fully fit my idea of ethics and morals, I've realized that it's not fair to discount them and claim they're universally unethical just because I don't think so. While one person may see an action as moral and correct, others may not. Just in the US, people argue almost every day because their moral identities do not coincide with someone else's. Clearly, my idea of morals and ethics directly conflicted with those of the Indian education system. I believe that raising a hand to a kid, no matter the circumstance, is wrong, but this system seems to believe otherwise. Physically mistreating a child should never be used as a form of obedience. I still wonder if the education were to ever change and students were exposed to a learning environment, would that be ultimately of disturbance to the overall culture of India. After India, we traveled to Thailand, where we studied agriculture and worked on our host family's organic farms. Unlike the first two countries where we primarily studied the social issue in regards to the country and our personal experience with it, Thailand was different. We mostly focused on analyzing the system of agriculture in the US, and I personally felt like there was somewhat of a disconnect between the work project to our seminars and discussions. We spent our days learning and interacting with our host family while helping them on their organic farm, but what we did and learned during the work project rarely came up in seminars. As a result of this, questions came up for me, including what the history of agriculture in Thailand looks like and how has that affected the minority groups of sustainable farmers, since only 18 of 250 families in our community were actually organic farmers. I had so many questions that I wanted answers to. Why was the man on their neighboring farm spraying all types of presumable chemicals over their plants? How do organic farmers like my family who only produce a minimal amount of food cope with their neighbors who probably use more mass production methods? What are the possible disparities between the organic ones and the non-organic ones? Do the organic farmers have a difficult time competing with other in the non-organic ones? Since I didn't receive the whole picture and answers to my questions like I did in South Africa, I personally felt more disconnected from the issue. The majority of time, we seem to focus on the history of agriculture in the US and the current setup of the system. However, I don't think referencing the US in a negative manner was an effective way for me to become motivated around becoming. For me, I realized that on top of learning about the global issue and its possible negativity, I also need positivity and achievable solutions to combat the issue. Throughout my values come alive in me. Loyalty. I believe one of the most important values in regards to relationships, or really anything, is in fact loyalty. I've lived in the US for 18 years now, and probably will for many more to come. I'm not excusing any actions of the US. I'm simply saying that it was not beneficial for me to discuss the negative things the US has done, knowing I would return here and could easily fall back into the systems we argued only months ago were wrong. In fact, I felt like I had to argue for the US and almost be defensive of it. It made me angry and frustrated to constantly look at it in a negative light. The US has done things that cannot be disregarded, but also offers a multitude of opportunities that I partake in that I could not in any other country. It felt wrong to not be living such an important value to me and being in an atmosphere that also seemed to disregard it. This frustration ultimately affected my attendance in seminar and made it difficult to critically analyze the deficiencies in the US in regards to the social issue. Looking back and reflecting on my actions, I realized that because I was so caught up with my frustration, I did not take full advantage of the opportunities I had around me. I could have transformed my frustration to something positive and action-oriented. I answered questions regarding the system of agriculture in Thailand that I could have asked Pajia, who is part of our partner organization in Thailand. If I had, in fact, asked Pajia my questions, I might not have received as much of a full circle understanding of agriculture in Thailand. I would have left a lot more content with how I went about responding to the issue. These feelings of frustration kept with me the entire time in Thailand and carried on over with me to Ecuador. In Ecuador, we focus on the environment, and for a work project, we help to reforest surrounding areas in our community. Throughout high school, the destruction of the environment always seemed to be a constant concern and a very much talked about subject. During my senior year, I took AP Environmental Science, where we learned about the environment as a whole in regards to the US, both social and economical aspects that have created the relationship between US citizens and the environment. Therefore, after hearing that we'd be studying the environment in Ecuador, I was very excited to have the opportunity to look at another country's relationship with the environment, similar to what I did during my senior year. Again, I felt like this was not entirely the case. I felt like most of the seminars involved discussing the environment in regards to the US and what the US has done to hurt it. While we read about certain aspects of the environment in the assigned readings, it seemed like they rarely came up in seminars, and when they did, we would quickly transition back to discussing the US. Maybe because the US is so present in Ecuador's history in regards to the environment that it tended to come up. I felt like we tended to generalize all people and their relationship environment in the US to one that mainly involved disregard and negativity. It seemed like we completely ignored the smaller grassroots organizations and groups of people that are working hard to combat this idea. Again, I struggled with my value of loyalty. I was trying to live it out in regards to the US, but it kept being overlooked when the conversation would turn back to discussing the US. I think I went about living out my value of loyalty to the US along the same way I would live it out within a relationship with a friend or family member. I stand up for them when I hear them being talked in a negative manner and try to highlight the positivity in the person. Because I became so frustrated, I no longer prioritized seminars as much as I could have. I knew if I went to seminar, I would go in with a sense of what the conversation was going to turn to. I would then be frustrated during seminar and leave irritated. Unfortunately, I no longer saw much value in attending seminar and instead focused my attention to other things, like spending time with my host family, talking to members of the group that I hadn't really talked to much before, and taking time for myself. Although I felt like there was more of a disconnect between me and the seminars in the last two countries, I'm still grateful for what I've experienced in these past 7 months and what I've learned from my relationships and memories with other people. I became and learned how to be part of a family of 18 people. I've been with these people every day for almost the past 200 plus days. I'm more than friends with everyone. We may all be different and have different personalities, yet we all found a way to be a cohesive group. I've learned to be fully comfortable with everyone by expressing my personality, identity, and values. Being back in the US, I realized how easy it is to fall back into the system that we rejected only months ago. Once I actually go home and am in an environment that I completely know, I will have more control over my actions. So it'll be easier for me to not be directly involved in the systems that I do not agree with. Over the course of these past 7 months, I've had the opportunity to reflect on my own ideals in regard to identifying others and their cultural practices. While I may not fully agree with certain aspects or qualities, ultimately creating conflict between my culture and theirs, I can still respect them and simply just understand that we have different definitions of our values. However, I still believe that at some points people can cross the line of right and wrong. For example, there are certain groups of people and cultural practice that I believe are completely ignoring and discounting the idea of basic human rights and freedoms, which I believe is inhumane and wrong. Additionally, I learned the importance of taking responsibility in an effective manner in regards to loyalty. Rather than disregard what is ignoring my value, I can actually learn from those interactions and find ways to gain a better understanding as to why it's discounting my value. Since before this trip, I never really had to voice my value of loyalty, I did not know how to respond when it was disregarded, and the first emotion that came up was frustration. Experiencing his actions that seemed to dismiss what I valued put me in a situation that remained truthful to my value. And I only saw one answer, which was to disengage from what was ignoring it. Moving forward, I now know this is not the only way to respond, and it is indeed not the best way to respond. So I thank this journey and these past 7 months in general for pushing me and allowing me to come face to face with my ethics. I saw them be completely disregarded, yet I also saw them be completely lived out. These drastic differences of reality showed me the multitude of ways to live your beliefs and values throughout your life.
We have about 5 or 10 minutes for Q&A. Samantha.
Yeah.
You mentioned you had a conflict as a U.S. citizen and your loyalty, and versus, I guess, the things that the U.S. has done in Ecuador with the environment.
Yes.
Is there anything specific that I'm just not aware of what the U.S. has done? I just wonder if there's something specific.
So I feel like in Ecuador, we mainly focus at the setup of the environment in the U.S., not in regards to Ecuador.
Okay.
Yeah. So I don't have this. Well, I do have one, the oil spill and like Chevron taking advantage of all the land and all the oil spills. Texaco. Thank you. I did a project on it myself. Sophomore year. Mm-hmm.
Did you have anyone else who you could connect with that was feeling that same?
Yeah, I think I was the most like, yes. But there were some other people that had like less degree or similar to how I was feeling. Talk to people like that. Yeah.
Do you think you're gonna take? Sorry, but do you think you're gonna take this, like interest in the environment and economic development and stuff, and apply to what you might want to major in college and stuff?
Major, that's a big one. But yeah, I definitely think it will stay with me when I go to college and decide like what classes I want to take. And yeah, I think the environment and food have always been a big part of me and like our family. So yeah, it's kind of stuck with me. Yeah. Yes.
I'm curious as to where and why you think you became such a USA supporter. I mean, more so than anyone. You felt this need to defend it.
Well, I think because I wouldn't have felt as much as that, or even like as American, whatever, had like it been a lesser degree. But I think because it was kind of a constant month and a half that I felt like I not had to, but like I was, because it was just constantly coming up, and I felt like it was hard to like then highlight the positivity and what they have done, what the U.S. has done well. That's why. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. We have a lunch break until 1:30.
Yeah, I figured you would like that.